it would be worth for you to come out to California, and and I ignored it again. And then I got another letter and said, we talked to the other people, and they said that they would do it for this amount of money. And I said, well, no, that's a different story. They were talking some real dollars. So I called them, and they talked to, the name was Sparrow, and real nice gentleman. And he said, yeah, I said, I was supposed to send a picture and all that, I said, and he said, we know about your airplane because you were in a magazine article, and we saw pictures of it, so we want your airplane. I said, okay. And I said, but now, I'm not going to take it, because you got to take the airplane apart. A home built like that, flying it cross country, across the desert, you end up with a problem, and you're out there, no tools, and God, just a disaster. I said, I'll take the wings off and the tail, and we'll put it in, ship it and take it out there. And he said, okay. I said, but before I start this, I said, I'd like to see some down payment, So anyway, the guy says, okay. He said, we'll have it to you. And I said, well, and he had the laid out schedule for me, to be out there and have the airplane put together and so forth. I said, well, that means I got to have money such and such a date. Well, that date came and went, and I didn't get it. So I called him up. I said, we ain't coming. He said, oh, what? He said, wait a minute. So he runs around. He said, he said, the check's in this mail bag. He said, I'll have it to you overnighted. So, and I got the check, and we started taking it apart and shipping it out there. But like I said before, they treated us great. I mean, the guys were so fair. They paid us our money, and then on top of that, was all room and board out there, was all taken care of. And then I took this out in a great big truck, and a rough riding thing, and I told I took this friend of mine with me, Kurt Lindar, and I said, I ain't going to drive this truck. We're going to rent a car. Even if we pay for it ourselves, So I rented a car. And at the end of the thing, the guy comes up and he says, in charge of financing, he says, I saw you driving a rental car. I said, yeah. He said, well, give me the bill for that. He said, we'll pay for that for you, So they treated us great. Really enjoyed it.
And tell us about what role the plane had in the movie, and maybe some of the experiences you had with the plane in the movie.
Well, they got us together, and we got out there, and they had built this airport on top of this mountain. And the reason they did this, there was no wires or no houses or nothing. When they did a shot of the scenery, it was all just like it would be in World War I out in the boonies, And so when we got there, we started working. It was hot. It was 100 degrees. And we had to put this airplane back together. And they made tents for us. The tent's big enough to put the airplane in. And that's how the movie was. If you've seen the picture Hell's Angels, they have all these little tents for the German and the American airplanes. And so we were in our tent, and we put the thing together. And again, they were so friendly. They were building what they call a pilot shack down the road from us. And I needed something. We had nothing to work with. We had some tools, but no tables or nothing, So I went down, and they had some scrap wood. I said, hey. I said, can I borrow your saw? And I got to make a table, So they gave us some junk wood, and we made a table, and they got it straightened. And then the first, I guess that was a Sunday, and then Monday they come out and they started, and they had the director and all that, and one of the guys that was in charge of the pilots came out, and he said, you guys, when the stars come out, don't, we want you to be comfortable, but don't harass them or, And okay, and then he said, no pictures, and I'm standing with a camera around my neck, and I thought, okay, So a little later, and we took some pictures, and I asked him, I said, what about these picture deals? And he says, for you guys, we don't care. He said, that's kind of we tell that to everybody because a lot of these rag magazines will send somebody in, they'll sneak in and take pictures of the stars and then take them out, He said, but you guys are just, for your own, we don't care, So anyway, we had a great time, and our job was basically they didn't want anybody to fly. Most of the stuff you see is movie magic, where they take a picture of the airplane and they project it up and it's flying and all that, But we had to taxi them and do all that kind of stuff on the ground. And what we'd get together, and a funny instance was Scorsese was the director, and apparently in the movie, and they were taking. We were trying to recreate the movie that they made from Hell's Angels. That's what, because Howard Hughes, that's what he made, that movie, Hell's Angels. So we were recreating that, and apparently it was very dusty when they did that. So they were out there, and they had a great big engine and a propeller over here on the side, and it was really dusty. It was like almost like dust. I mean, like talcum powder, the ground, real thick. And so this guy's over there with a shovel, and he's, you know, okay, action, you know, we start up the engine, then we taxi out, and this guy's throwing these shovels of dirt in this fan, you know. Well, you couldn't see the airplanes. It was so bad, you know. Corzese comes around, stop, 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 he says. And I felt sorry because when they set us up, they had, 8 of us. There was only 7 SE-5s, and then the rest, 8 of them were Fokker, were the German airplanes. And they were all lined up, and then in the movie, as they took a view of us, it showed another guy that was supposed to be dragging his airplane along the back, you know, just typical scenery stuff. And when we started those engines up, that guy got covered. I mean, he was just covered with dirt. So I felt sorry for him. He had a really nice airplane. Anyway, they went, and then the next scene, they would come and they took a water truck and wetted it all down so it wouldn't be so much dirt. And so we spent 7 days or 8 days taking different shots of taxiing around and doing things and flying over the camera and stuff like that. But the other story is, in the contract it said we will not fly. So when I put the airplane, I took it apart, I put the airplane together with smaller bolts, smaller diameter, because when you put those wings on, it's a real close tolerance, and you gotta, you know, bang them in there and all that. So I said, well, I'm gonna took a lathe and I machined the bolts down, that slip right in there, no problem. So we get out there, and the one airplane, they had 2 airplanes from Canada. Well, different laws and different rules, they were gonna let them fly, do their flying. Well, on Sunday, when they put them together, this guy was going to test fly it, and he was an experienced pilot, I thought, and he decided to take off uphill, downwind, and 100 degrees. Well, there's 3 things for a disaster, and he gets airborne, and the engine's not running very good. So he decides, and this was, when you left the airport, there was nothing but rocks. There was no place to go. So he takes off, and he gets airborne, and he decides he ain't gonna make it, so he puts it on the ground. When he does that, the gear collapses. So the only airplane they can fly is pieces. Or not pieces, but he can't fly it. So the next day they came to me and they said, would you fly your airplane? I said, well, I said, no. I said, I told them the story that I'd, you know, reduced the size of the bolts, and it wasn't really trimmed up or anything, but I'll tell you what I would do. I said, I'll take it off, get airborne so you can get a shot of it not being on the ground, and then I'll put it back on the ground and land it, you know. He said, well, yeah. He said, that'd be pretty good. He said, now, he says, would you let our pilot do that? A union pilot. I said, no. I said, I wouldn't take the responsibility for the guy if he got hurt, you know. I'd feel really bad. Anyway, so they had another little 7/8 scale they flew, but they didn't fly mine. But Union, and when we first got there, Union pilot came up to me. He said, "Oh, he said, nice airplane." And he said, "But, you know," he said, you can't even taxi it." I said, "Well," I said, "nobody else is going to taxi it." So they had some conversation, and they let us do that. Everybody flew their own, or did their own thing in their own airplane. But anyway, it was interesting. And like I said, they treated us great, man. We were what they call star status. We could stand behind the camera when they're shooting other scenes. We met with Corzese and Leonardo, and we had just a great time.
And when you originally decided to do that plane, why did you decide on that plane, and where did you find the design, and how did you?
Okay, very simply, we decided on the airplane because of its basic. It was a structure that looked like it'd be relatively easy to build. It had square sides, round on top. It tapered back to the tail. It wasn't compound curves anywhere. It had a symmetrical wing, which means all the ribs would be the same all the way out. It wasn't tapered, where if it's a tapered wing, every rib is a different size and a different jig to make the wing. We had to make jigs and everything, you know, to put the ribs together. They got to be all the same size and, you know, really close tolerance. So we had to make all these jigs, and what they are is you know, like you take a piece of this table would be ideal, and you cut it the size of the rib, and then you take the drawing, and then you put it on there, and then you put nails in it, and you bend the wood and fit it into the nails, and you glue your stuff on it when you take it out, and, you know, anyway. That's the reason, because it was a relatively modern and safe airplane, I think, to fly once we built it. and would have been structurally pretty nice, easy to build, which wasn't. It's not easy, but it's easier. Let's put it that way. I guess you didn't need major tooling. A lot of the airplanes, when like some of the German airplanes that were round, they'd have big tooling, and they'd make this plywood and wet it and form it and glue it. So we didn't have to do any of that. And anyway, and we figured the cost would be pretty good. But what was your second
Where
question?
did you get the design?
Oh,
I mean,
the design. Okay, the design. We went to Smithsonian. We drove up there and spent a couple of days with them, and they pulled out the drawings they had, and they made what they call microfiche, for a computer. And then they didn't have all of them, and apparently over the years, people would come in and borrow stuff, and they wouldn't bring it back, they were missing. So then we went to Ride Pat, and they have an airplane there. And we went there and measured it and all that, and they were very helpful too. And like I said, they assigned a guy to us. And whenever I had a problem, I'd call him. And they had some more drawings too. Then we went and got a model airplane drawing. A guy had taken the full-scale drawing of yesteryear, and these model airplane kits were made probably 25, 30 years ago when they had all the drawings. So he scaled it down. So we took that and blew it up and went to Parks College and had the students there look at it. But we had our own draftsman, and he drafted all the ribs and we copied. The fuselage in the original airplane was all wood. It was wooden stringers, and then they had, remember the old days when your screen door and you wanted to, when it was sagging, you put this wire in there with a turnbuckle that you could tighten it and pull it up, Every cross section had 2 of those in there to pull it up tight. And they even had the side was laced with leather, and then you would take that off every so often, and you tighten all those things up. But of course, a fighter in World War I, life expectancy was maybe 20 hours, so they'd have to tighten them too many times, But that's basically why we built that airplane, that design.
And now, do you still have that airplane?
No, I sold it not too long ago. I have had a pacemaker put in, and the people at FAA Medical says if you have a pacemaker and you can pass all the tests, stress tests and all that, you can keep your license to fly a full-scale airplane. Except you got to do that every year. That's $5,000. My insurance does not cover that, So they have a new system out, and this is because of the EAA has developed this, called light sport aircraft. Did the other gentleman talk about that at all?
No, I don't think so.
Light sport aircraft is brand new. It just got approved. And a light sport aircraft, you don't have to have a full-fledged medical. If you have a driver's license and you pass the eye and the ear and those things in a typical driver's license, you can then fly a light sport. Light sport aircraft has to be under 1,320 pounds. It has to be 2-place. You can't fly it on instruments alone. It has, restrictions like that. The speed, it can't have retractable gear, and the speed cannot exceed 130 knots. But that covers your J3s, your Aeronicas, your air coupes, and that kind of stuff. So you can still fly, and that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm building, the airplane I'm rebuilding right now is an Aeronica 7AC 2-place. You sit 4.5, got a stick, and it carries about 15 gallons of fuel. And of course, the reason for this is you don't want a big enough airplane you can fly into a building and hurt it, An airplane this size, you really fly into a building, you break the window, and that's about it. So that's the latest, and it's a boom to aviation because everybody's out there. Those Czechs and the Poles and the Germans are all building these light sport aircraft. But again, because of they still have to have the same approval. They start out at about $80,000, And this one I bought for $6,500, and when I'm finished with it, it'll be worth $35,000, I guess. But I'll have 2 years in it.
And we're talking to everybody about kind of why this passion for flight. I mean, you spend years and years of your life building these planes, and they have been flying since you were 15. What drives it? I mean, what is it about flying and planes that, as opposed to cars or ships or
Well, I don't know. I've done you know, like I said, I've rebuilt cars and I've owned boats and all that, but I think a lot of it has to do with the type of people you deal with in aviation. I mean, they're really a first-class bunch of people, and because everybody has to work so hard to get a license is a real challenge. To get an instrument-rated commercial, that's what I have. I have instrument-rated commercial, multi-engine, you know, all that, and it's not something you just go down and you sign your name on a hunting license, for instance. Okay, here's your license. You know, it's tough to get. And then on top of it, to get an A&P license, you know, you have to be recommended by a FAA guy, and you have to have X number of years in doing it, and so forth and so on. But I think it's a camaraderie and the people you deal with. It's great. I don't care what country you go to. I can walk into an airport in Germany or France or anywhere, and you got a friend, you know, and they'll give you their car to use. They won't give you their wife maybe, but they'll give you almost anything else. It's really a whole different atmosphere and camaraderie of people, and I think that's the thing. But of course, I'm mechanically inclined. I love mechanical things, and I like working on them as well as flying them. So it's a combination of things.
Great. And what kind of plane did you say you're working on now?
It's a Ronica. It's what they call a 7AC. It started out this one was built in '46. And it had a 65 horsepower engine in it. It flies about 100 miles an hour roughly, and very economical. Burns about 4 gallons an hour, so you know it's getting 25 miles to the gallon, which isn't bad. And it's very great for sightseeing, taking kids or your girlfriend or something for a ride. You know, it's not something you want to fly down to Florida in. You know, it's not for that. But it's a neat little airplane.
And will you sell that one too, or is that one for you
because of my light sport aircraft license now, I have to have something like that. And in fact, the first time in my life is the last 4 months I've been without an airplane. My medical actually expired in about 3 months ago, and so I don't have an airplane. And I went to a fly-in the other day down at Columbia, Illinois, and I drove. A real setback.
Yeah, it must have been hard for you.
Yeah.
And do you have other projects that you're looking forward to down the line? I mean, do you have ideas of plans that you want to?
I'm 74 now, and I do think about these 4-year programs. You know, whether you're going to do this or not, and mostly because of the money you'll have tied up to. Because a kit in work, you can barely get your money out of your material. If you finish it, and it's painted and pretty and all that, you can make money on it. But you don't want to be in between there, you know. So I'll keep doing them. This one will finish. I was trying to beat the snow. I'm going to have a tough time of it. I got everything done except cover the fuselage, and I was looking at the weather. And actually, the next week they were talking about I got it 55 degrees to paint. You don't have 50 because we're in the hangar. We're not inside. So I'm going to have to. I may have to. But if we get some Indian summer, I'll finish it. If not, it'll be in the spring.
Very good. But you don't have a specific plane that you're thinking, oh, next I really want to build.
Oh yeah, I always have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I was involved in one, and because I wanted to get something started, me and another guy went together, Mike Bosick, and we bought a Zodiac, which is made in Mexico, Missouri. Mm-hmm. It's a low-wing, all-metal airplane. Like I said about a while ago, they're pre-punched the wings, and they do a lot of work for you. It's a kit, and the kit, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with the motor mount and the cowling, was $16,000, which is, you know, $8,000 each. So we were going to build it together. Well, after starting on it, we built the tail and the rudder, and it's just tough. He works at Anheuser, to get together to do it. So then, you know, you have to do it separately. So what I did, I bought this airplane, I started on it, and I said, here, you know, because originally we were each going to buy one and help each other build them. Because, like I say, you build a tool and you do it, and, you know, might as well use it twice. So I said, okay, you go ahead and you take this and you build it, you know, go ahead and do it. I'm going to finish this Aeronica first. And that may be my next airplane. The only thing bad about I'm 6'3", and most of these airplanes are built for a guy about 6'1" max, so they're a little cramped. But I can see that by redesigning it a little bit, I could Mike's about 5'8", so you know he fits that thing perfectly. So he wouldn't want me to stretch it out, you know.
Well, great. We've been talking mostly about kind of building, but do you have favorite flight stories? Stories of.
Well, yeah, I guess the one I look at, and when they interviewed me for the newspaper, we flew 2 Pipers over to Switzerland, and that was an very interesting trip. We flew from here. Well, first of all, let me tell a story. A guy from Germany who wanted to buy an airplane, or from Switzerland actually. He's from Germany, but he was in Switzerland. Wanted to buy a couple of Pipers for a club they were forming. And when they found out what the insurance and the taxes were going to be to deliver it and all that, they decided not to do that. And so they called a friend of mine, Ken Fisher, who owned a restaurant in Belleville, and said, you know, would you guys buy those airplanes for us and put them in your name and fly them over to us, and they'll be used airplanes, and it's a whole different ballgame than cost-wise for them. And we said, yeah, we'll do that. So we took delivery. We had great plans. We were going to take delivery on the airplanes, and I think this was in August. And this goes way back now, 74, 75. We were going to take delivery on the airplane. We were going to have them what they call tanked, which means they put a 55-gallon drum in the back seat of the airplane, and it runs some hoses up to the fuel selector, and that would give us enough range to make the jumps over to Greenland and so forth. And we're going to take that airplane, we're going to fly it for a couple of days and get all the bugs out of it and have it really well planned. In reality, they delivered the airplane one night. They worked on it all night and tanked it. At 3 in the morning, we took off. We'd never touched the airplane before. And the first thing we did, we're climbing out and I said, well, we better check the aux tank to make sure they work. And I changed all the valves. Kenny was in the left seat at the time, and the engine quit. So we scrambled and got it running again, and they said, well, we can make it. Our first leg was up to Moncton, Canada, and so we get up there, and